Looking at the familiar box in front of me, I knew that the system had caught me again. I remember that I had only been back to the original world for less than 2 minutes. The system cried, "Host, I promise this is the last time I will catch you back for a mission." I pretended to refuse to do the task. "I don't." The system collapsed and said, "Don't." As soon as you left on your front foot, the world was collapsed by the male protagonist. "You help me again. I will increase your remuneration to 1 billion this time." I smiled and agreed, "Deal." Suddenly, the door of the box was pushed open. My brother was standing next to me, and he walked over and hugged the man. "Brother, welcome back home." He pulled a man in a dark red shirt to me, and proudly introduced him. "My sister, Violet Wallace." The man in front of me is the male protagonist I want to attack, Tiffany Broad, the president of the Broad family group. When he was young, he was left in the house by his parents, who were married to a business, and the servants did not ask about the situation when their employers did not come home. And for a long time, Tiffany Broad was worse off than the dogs in the villa. He has never felt love since he was a child, so he has developed a paranoid and coquettish personality, and he begins to become ruthless when he grows up. The man in front of him was wearing a slim-fitting black blazer with delicate moire cufflinks pinned to the cuffs of the suit. My attention was on the cold white skin, that he had unbuttoned a few dark red shirts, and it was very sexy and cold. It feels like it's not easy to get along with, and the aggression on the body is too strong. Because I was staring at him, he nodded at me and said, "Hello, Tiffany Broad. Nice to meet you." After the greetings, everyone sat down. He picked up the red wine and tasted it carefully, and his movements were so elegant and lazy that it was hard for me to ignore the charm he exuded. Shu noticed that I was peeking at him, and he turned his head to me, and smiled softly. I sat down in my seat, and took a sip of tea from my teacup, trying to calm down. After a while, the dishes I had ordered were served. But why were they all my favorite dishes? My brother has changed sex. He actually remembered what I liked to eat this time. I was the only one who ate the whole time. My brother and Tiffany Broad drank and chatted, and the two of us only ate a few bites of food once in a while. After eating, I saw that the two of them were still talking, so I found an excuse to go out to breathe. After a while, when I pushed the door in, they both looked up, and even Tiffany Broad had a look of shock on his face. At this point, my hair was slightly damp, my delicate makeup was removed, and I changed into a pink tracksuit. When I came in, Tiffany Broad got up and walked over. "Baby, what's wrong with you? Why are the eyes so red? What's the matter with the hair and clothes?" I looked at Tiffany Broad, who was full of melancholy, and remembered what had just happened in the bathroom, and felt aggrieved. My eyes turned redder, and the tears kept flowing, so frightened that he hurriedly pulled me to my seat. Seeing that my brother was still sitting in his seat, I whispered, "Brother, I'm sorry. I may have caused you trouble. I just saw someone bullying a little sister in the toilet, so I helped to persuade the group to drive away the group. I was splashed with makeup remover by those bad guys, and you can see my eyes are red. This dress was borrowed from my little sister who was bullied, and she told me that this restaurant belongs to one of the younger sisters in the group. You're right, baby. It's a good idea to be helpful." He comforted me and wiped my tears with a tissue. "Before helping others next time, you should also pay attention to your own safety." Okay, why would he call me baby? According to the plot, isn't this the first time he's seen me? Did he fall in love with me at first sight? Then don't I even need to attack him? And the task is completed directly. But I don't have time to delve into that. After I finished speaking, I looked up and secretly glanced at King Wallace's reaction, only to see that my brother's eyes were not only worried, but also angry. My brother said to Tiffany Broad, "Help me take Violet Wallace to the hospital for an eye checkup and then take her home." "I'm going to find out what happened," Tiffany Broad answered. "If it can't be solved, leave it to me tomorrow to solve it, and I won't let Violet Wallace be bullied in vain." Underground garage. Tiffany Broad opens the trunk and retrieves the towel from the trunk. The slender hands held a towel on my head, and gently wiped my wet hair. "Baby, haven't hurt anywhere else? If so, do you have to say it?" My eyebrows frowned slightly. Why did he call me baby again? Before I could think about it, the man's fingertips pinched my earlobe. "Baby, why are you in a daze? Let's go." I'll take you to see the eyes. The man carried me into the car. Immediately, he returned to the driver's seat, propped his left hand on the center console, and leaned over to help me buckle up my seatbelt. His cheek was so close to mine. Pop! The sound rang out. Soon, he returned to the driver's seat with his body straightened, stepped on the accelerator, and the car drove out. The cold ebony notes, which did not leave with his departure, still lingered on the tip of my nose. This is my 10th time attacking him, and my body still can't help but feel excited when facing his approach. I don't know how long it took. As the temperature inside the car rose, I came back to my senses and glanced at the air conditioning temperature in the car. It turned out that he turned on 28 degrees C, presumably because he was afraid that I would catch a cold, and he was still so intimate under the cold appearance. I put a towel over my hair to avoid his gaze, and looked sideways out the window. My eyelashes drooped. I can't bear to leave him in this world again after completing the mission. After I got out of the hospital, he sent me home. When I got to Wallace's house, I unbuckled my seatbelt and thanked Tiffany Broad before getting out of the car. It just so happened that my brother drove back. My brother said to me, "Sister, go back and rest first. I have something important to talk about with Tiffany Broad." Although I was curious to see what the two of them were going to say, I obediently went in. In the bedroom, the pink princess bed, the blue floor-to-ceiling curtains, and the cosmetics on the dresser are neatly arranged. After a day of tossing, I gradually fell into a dream. The next day, as I finished my shower and went downstairs in a little suspender, my eyes met for a few seconds with Tiffany Broad, who was sitting on the couch. I'm blinded. Why is he here? He's still wearing a bathrobe. I froze up the stairs, staring at Tiffany Broad's bathrobe. His bathrobe was slightly open, and he was leaning lazily on the couch, and I could see his seductive 8-pack abs, as well as views of certain mysterious areas. This early in the morning, I'm afraid he's not seducing me. The man lifted his eyelids and was just about to stand up and walk towards me. I reacted immediately. When I went downstairs, I thought that my brother was not at home at this point, and he was not wearing underwear. I raced back to my room, and the door slammed shut. When I went back to my room to calm down, I put my ear to the door and listened to the movement outside, but I couldn't hear anything. It's okay. I was relieved that Tiffany Broad hadn't gone upstairs to settle my account for staring at his abs. When I came back to my senses, my cheeks flushed. It's really damning. I quickly changed my clothes, put on sunscreen, grabbed my car keys, and gently went downstairs. Tiffany Broad was no longer sitting in the living room. Half an hour later, King Wallace's office. When I opened the door, I saw that my brother was not in front of my desk. So, I went to the couch and wanted to sit and wait for my brother. And when I walked to the couch, I found Tiffany Broad lying down. His eyebrows were slightly frowned, and he couldn't sleep soundly, and I always felt that he seemed to be very tired. You don't always stay up late working, do you? In the original world, I was a well-known novel author in Haking, and I found that my unpublished novel was stolen by my best friend. She also used her name to publish before I published it, and she published a novel that was originally my own. I'm an original, but I've become a plagiarist. Soon, I was abused by major netizens, and in order to find evidence to prove my innocence, I searched for evidence day and night. In the end, he died suddenly because of staying up late. After I died, I came to the world of this book called Paranoia and Presumptuous Pets. According to the rules of the system, I have to transform the paranoid and crazy male protagonist Tiffany Broad and guide the other party to be a good person. Only then will I have a chance to regain my life and return to my original world. In my previous career as a bookmaker, I ended up making Tiffany Broad a good person. After retiring after the success of the work, I rejected the system's offer to help me stay in the world of the book, and chose to return to the original world without hesitation. I'm going back for revenge. But every time I went back, as soon as my progress in collecting evidence improved, I was caught by the system again. If it weren't for the system giving me a large sum of money every time, I wouldn't have helped obediently. In the office, I tiptoed over to Tiffany Broad and crouched down, staring at his godlike face. This face is God's food. Angular, thick eyebrows, high nose bridge. I want to slide on his nose. I reached out and wanted to sneak a little bit. At this moment, Tiffany Broad suddenly reached out and grabbed my hand, and the hot heat reached my hand. I stared at the powerful hands that clenched my wrists, and I was really fascinated. What do you want to do to save me, Yan Dog? I noticed him looking down at our hands. He let go slowly, and said, I'm sorry, baby, did I scratch you? My slender wrist was scratched red by him, and the red mark on the cold white skin looked abrupt. Seeing that he was sincerely apologizing to me, I stood up and wanted to run. I'm going to stay away from this ice cube face in the future. Can't be emotional? But because I had been squatting for so long, I swayed as I stood up, and I collapsed straight onto Tiffany Broad's broad chest. It's so strong. The muscles in my chest hurt my nose. I scolded Tiffany Broad all the time, but I forgot that I had been lying on top of him in a warm position. Suddenly, there was a knock on the office door. It was my brother, and he hurriedly came over and helped me up. I angrily said to Tiffany Broad, you rascal. The man's thin lips lifted lightly and responded, If the baby says I am, then I am. Cast. I came to visit Ben Kennan, the second male in the book, and the assistant helped distribute hundreds of cups of milk tea. Ben Kennan pulled me into his break room and smiled. Violet Wallace, are you free for the night? Let's have a meal together. I thought about it, and I didn't have anything to do tonight, so I agreed. This drama was invested by my brother and me together, and it's normal for me to stare at it. But I didn't expect Ben Kennan to confess to me at dinner. He took out a bouquet of flowers and knelt on the ground. Violet Wallace, I like you. We have known each other for so many years, and I have always been a coward and dare not confess. Can you be my girlfriend? I didn't have time to react because I was surprised, so he handed me the flowers. What's worse is that the photos of the two of us eating were taken by the paparazzi and posted on Weibo. Netizens said that Ben Kennan's confession was successful, and even my identity was revealed. Everybody says we're a good match. The whole network is about my love affair with Ben Kennan. I subconsciously called my brother to solve the matter, but his phone couldn't get through, and he was probably still on the plane to go abroad. I was a little panicked, afraid that Tiffany Broad would see the news, which would affect my progress in the strategy. Just when I was thinking about whether to ask him out, I explained it to him personally. Suddenly, the doorbell rang at my house. It was Tiffany Broad. To be precise, he is full of alcohol. I hurriedly helped the man in through the doorway, but he was so heavy that I had to put the person down on the couch. Who knows, when I put him down, I fell on him because of my unstable center of gravity. I was lying on his chest. My hands were just propping up on the sofa and trying to stand up, and the next second I was hugged by the man. The man lifted his eyelids, and his dark eyes looked at me quietly. Suddenly, he said in a aggrieved voice, baby, you're finally back again. You don't want to go. Okay, I will listen to you obediently from now on. Emotions buried somewhere deep in my heart are pulled out and infinitely amplified. In order to go back to take revenge, I did give up on him, and return to the original world after each strategy mission. Although the system says that after the male protagonist leaves me, the memory will be washed away, but the world collapsed again and again, and I was summoned back again and again. Has his memory really been washed away? Suddenly, there was a pain in the lip flap. At some point, Tiffany Broad and I switched positions, and now I'm lying on the couch with him above me. I put my arms around his neck, and kissed him on the lips with great affection. The drunken man sensed my initiative, and a hot kiss swept in. The teeth were quickly pried open. When I was kissed to the core, he suddenly whispered in my ear, baby, don't look at others. Isn't your target of your strategy? Did I not feed you? You don't like other people. Okay, we won't sleep tonight. Shall I serve you? I was taken aback by Tiffany Broad's words. Just when I wanted to ask what the situation was, my teeth were skillfully and flexibly pried open by the man. Kisses with a minty aroma swept in. I was immersed in the joy that Tiffany Broad brings. I don't know how long later, the man's bewitching voice sounded in my ears, baby, are you still satisfied with my service? I'm still in a state of emptiness, and I don't have time to make an evaluation. The man spoke again. Would you like to give me some sweetness now? As soon as the words fell, the man's movements sank. I was taken to the clouds again. The next day, at noon, I woke up with a sore back, and Tiffany Broad sat next to me, and played with my hair. Luckily, when he woke up, he didn't remember what had happened that day. Still get along with me as usual, but out of an abundance of caution, I hid from him for several days. But I can't hide today, because I was called a parent. My brother was out of town and Tiffany Broad was coming to school, because my brother entrusted me to him. My brother went on a business trip abroad, and couldn't come back for 3 or 5 years, leaving me alone in China. The company wants to expand its business, and he said that he wants to make money to save my dowry. In the counselor's office, I sat down on the couch with my head down and watched Tiffany Broad and the counselor understand the ins and outs of the matter. I stole a glance at him, who had hurried over from the company, wearing a serious black suit with a red collar. Bring, the counselor said earnestly. Violet Wallace's ideological work is left to you. You take her back first. The counselor got up. Tiffany Broad followed, and then I noticed him getting up and walking towards me. I knew I was in trouble, and I kept my head down like a quail, not daring to look at him. I'm afraid he'll scold me. After all, I got into a fight with someone at school. When I realized that I had followed him to the school's underground parking lot, I noticed that he had loosened the tie around his neck, and the tie was carried by him, in the palm of his hand. Tiffany Broad exuded a terrifying sense of oppression. He was still wearing a dark red shirt today, and the green tendons on the back of his hands were bulging. It always made me feel like he was going to lock me up in the basement. I really can't be blamed for thinking too much, because there really is a basement in my villa. During this time, it was just me and him in the house, and every day I was careful not to provoke this ice cube face. Tiffany Broad's deep voice rang out. Violet Wallace, come here. I rubbed to his side, and he pressed against the car door with his backhand, and I subconsciously put my hand on his chest. At the same time, I felt the sound of my heart pounding. He reached back and forth, looked at my arms, neck, etc., sighed, and said, "Is there any injury?" I shook my head quickly. I didn't expect him to worry about me, not to scold me. Speaking of which, today's frame really me off. Today there is a new student in my class. It was Amelia, whom I had met in the toilet before, and I had helped her once, and I had been splashed with makeup remover by the group. I was shocked to see her, and I thought she was just in high school, but I didn't expect that she was in the same grade as me. She was bullied in the bathroom again today in a Lolita dress. I saw it and helped again, but I didn't expect it to get big. When I helped her, the group of people besieged me and grabbed me by the hair, and in self-defense, I took action. But she hid next to me, and didn't say a word. The other students took our trouble to the counselor in the bathroom, and Amelia didn't even explain it to me in the end. I couldn't convince the counselor on my own, so I was called a parent. When I called Tiffany Broad, I vaguely heard him telling his men to stop and give a report. If there is anything that can't be solved in the future, you can discuss it with me. Don't do it yourself. I'll be worried if you stumble into it. You know. Tiffany Broad pressed her big palm against my head, and comforted me with a soft voice. I nodded. Grievances welled up in my heart, and I threw myself into his arms, and said in a depressed tone, "Got it, thank you." I heard him sigh, and he reached out to hug me. I smelled the good smell of him and my mood was relieved. I heard him whisper and pampered in a doting tone, "I really can't help you." So I stupidly rushed up to help others. "Baby, do I want to take you to buy and buy?" He reached out and held my head, looked down at me, and raised his tone to ask patiently. I didn't miss the 2 shallow dimples raised by the man's handsome cheeks. I shook my head. I really didn't lack anything. I didn't want to buy and buy. Let's go and eat with Brother Ben Kennan. He doesn't have a show today. I wanted to test if he really knew I was there to attack him. Hey. Tiffany Broad squinted at me. I felt a hint of danger coming at me. Quickly defended, "You, my brother, Brother Ben Kennan, aren't you 3 good friends? Isn't it okay to eat together?" I remember when I was on the set, Brother Ben Kennan said that you haven't been to see him for so long. How about I have a meal together? I know of a restaurant in a secret location, and Ben Kennan's identity is not easy for the paparazzi to discover. I was talking about my own arrangements. Suddenly, Tiffany Broad opened her mouth and bit my lip, causing a pain in her lip. I couldn't help but exclaim, "HMM." I don't know how long this sudden kiss lasted. After a long time, I felt like I was being kissed all over my body and lost my strength, so I had to lie on top of Tiffany Broad. When he finally let go of his lips in my mouth, I puffed up and asked, why did you kiss me, Violet Wallace? Don't you really know why? Of course, it's because I like it. I like it so much that I want to keep you around. Tiffany Broad pressed her forehead to mine and continued, baby, don't look at other men and don't eat with them. It's good that you have me alone. Don't give the little time you have to others. I'm afraid that you will leave me after you complete the task. Task? I was shocked, and my body trembled slightly in his arms. Now in this situation, I can almost be sure that he knows that I am a book wearer. However, the system is no longer in my mind. Who is going to tell me what the hell is going on? Could it be that the characters in the book have awakened themselves? The parking lot was quiet for a while. Someone was talking nearby, and Tiffany Broad opened the car door and carried me in. He also sat in the back seat. He cupped my cheek and said, Violet Wallace, I'll listen to you and be a good person, but I beg you, don't leave me again. Okay. Through the dim lights in the car, I could see that Tiffany Broad was very disappointed. The sadness in his black eyes stung me. My mind flashed back to me in fits and starts, and those were images of me and him fighting to the death. These are the happy memories between us, after the success of the previous raids. Soon, my doubts were confirmed, and Tiffany Broad's voice turned cold. Violet Wallace, even if you go back, it's useless. The stability of this world is determined by my emotions. After you leave, as soon as I collapse, the system will arrest you back. No, it won't. I whispered in my heart that the system had said that this was the last time they would get me back. The dog system can't lie to me, right? Tiffany Broad knew I was wearing books, but he couldn't help it if I didn't admit it. I hurriedly changed the subject. Will I not be able to see things in the future? Can you accompany me to the hospital? I grabbed Tiffany Broad's arm and started petting him in his arms. In the compartment with limited space, I heard the man sigh helplessly. He touched my head. Coward, I don't force you. As long as you're still with me, let's go. I'll drive you to the hospital. Tiffany Broad finished fastening my seatbelt and walked to the driver's seat to drive the car. Private hospitals. Before he arrived, he was in the car to call the doctor. When I went to the doctor, he sat outside the door and waited for me, and I didn't let him in with me. I need to calm down. I'm not sure if he's going to do anything to stop me from going back, or, after I complete the redemption mission this time and go back, will the world collapse again? Will I be pulled back again? My brain was a mess, and I kicked him out. When I came out of the doctor's place, I saw him sitting quietly in the waiting chair. His eyes were closed. His eyes were still a little blue, and he looked very tired. I couldn't bear to wake him up, so I stood next to him against the wall, took out my phone to play, and wanted to wait to see how long he would sleep. Suddenly, a hoarse voice sounded. Baby, what did the doctor say? I heard a voice, and subconsciously, snorted. I turned to Tiffany Broad, who was awake, and smiled at him. I'm fine. I'm drugged. Let's go. Seeing this, Tiffany Broad motioned for me to follow and take me home. I hesitated, then asked, why don't you go back first? I'll just take a taxi back. It's late. You can go back to the office first. Tiffany Broad didn't agree with me and looked at me. Shall I hug you? No, I can walk by myself. I hurriedly walked out, but because of the medicine, in fact, I can't see things accurately, and I stumble. Tiffany Broad, who was walking ahead, probably noticing that I wasn't following him, looked back at me as I walked against the wall. I looked at him in the eye, a little embarrassed. Immediately, I saw him stretch out his palm towards me, and I put my little hand on his big palm. His expression was visibly stunned, and I even saw some surprise in it. However, I didn't expect that. When I got home, Tiffany Broad locked me in the basement. No matter what I said, Tiffany Broad felt like I wanted to run. He locked me and him in the basement. It is said to be a basement, but in fact, it is fully equipped with living utensils. Tiffany Broad went to the bathroom to wash up, and I sat on the bed playing with my phone. Suddenly, ding, Weshot's message prompt sounded. Someone was looking for me, and I reached out to click on it, but as soon as I caught a glimpse of the word Bert back, Tiffany Broad took my phone. I looked up at him and wondered, what are you doing with my phone? She's not a good person. Don't get along with her. She's made you miserable a few times before. Don't pay attention to her. Tiffany Broad wrapped me in his arms and leaned against the head of the bed. Is Bert back a bad guy? Since the world has reopened so many times, my previous memories are a little blurry. As I tried to remember, I remembered. Bert back is the vicious female partner of the book, and she has liked Tiffany Broad for many years. When I first wore a book to Tiffany Broad, I was jealous that Tiffany Broad was treating me well, and sent someone to kidnap me. But it seems that, when I wore the book a few times later, she didn't seem to kidnap me. Could it be that Tiffany Broad has already awakened to herself? Did he stop those things in advance? No wonder Tiffany Broad doesn't like my contact with her. I snuggled up to Tiffany Broad and said, I'll listen to you, and I'll never be in contact with her again. I took out my phone and blocked her. Should I give up and go back to the original world? At the moment, my temples hurt terribly. Immediately, a pair of large palms pressed against my temples to help me relax. I didn't refuse his kindness. I fell asleep in his arms. When I woke up the next day, I looked at Tiffany Broad, who had fallen asleep with me in her arms. I reached out to smooth his frowning brow, but I had barely touched his brow when he woke up. His black eyes stared at me, and for a long time, he begged, Violet Wallace, don't leave me, I'll be a good person. Well, I'm not going to leave again. I'm sorry to have left you so many times. I offered to kiss his thin lips. I don't want to go back to the original world. Even if I went back, I was alone, without family, and my only best friend betrayed me. I may never meet someone who loves me as much as he does in my life. Sensing my urgency, Tiffany Broad reached out and grabbed the back of my head to take the initiative back. Dense and stormy kisses fell, and I reciprocated his affection with the same passion. Tiffany Broad, be my boyfriend. I mentioned this need to him when we were after the first round of kisses. Okay, it's my pleasure, Tiffany Broad said happily, then leaned down and kissed me, biting my lip. I didn't expect Ben Kennan to come to the school to look for me, although he wears a mask and a hat. He is so famous that I am afraid that some of my classmates will recognize him. I wanted to ignore him and go straight home, but when I take a step, he follows, and he refuses to go until he makes it clear to me. I had to take people to the coffee shop next to the school and open a private room. I sat nervously. What are you looking for me? Let's get straight to the point. Our scandal that day was completely dismissed by Tiffany Broad, even in order to stifle CP fans. After asking for my consent, he also officially announced our relationship with the group number. I haven't been in contact with Ben Kennan since. Ben Kennan expertly ordered my favorite coffee for me and smiled helplessly. Can't you be friends now? I thought about it for a moment and shook my head. If you don't like me anymore, that's a possibility. If it works, I'll have to ask. I don't want our meeting to cause displeasure to my boyfriend because I love him so much. Why do you only like him? When we met first, am I not good? Ben Kennan, love doesn't make sense. You're so good. You'll find someone who likes you and treats you well. You don't, and they shall hang themselves on my tree. It's not early. I'm going home, and we won't see each other in the future except for business. Tiffany Broad is a vinegar spirit. If only he knew I was meeting Ben Kennan privately. I guess I have to get it back in bed again. I've just reported to him, lest he hear from anyone else that we've met. I got up to leave, but I heard him say, your hair is messed up. Hey. I took out my phone as a mirror and looked at it, and found that it was really messy. After tidying up, I smiled and said goodbye to him. Go. You want to be happy. Don't hang on this tree. Okay. Tiffany Broad's apartment. Ever since I made a video call to my brother, and confessed to him that I was with Tiffany Broad, I don't know what Tiffany Broad did to convince my brother that he kidnapped me to live with him. He has been quite peaceful for a year, after I promised him that he would not leave even if he completed his mission. Although I promised him, he was always uneasy, picking me up and dropping me off from class every day, and pestering me at night. Today I finally finished my exams and went on summer vacation, and Tiffany Broad was very happy, because he had already planned to travel with me to various places, and someone in the company would take care of it for him. Tonight, he cooked by himself, and opened a bottle of old red wine. After a few glasses, my eyes were already foggy, and suddenly I heard him say to me in a hoarse voice, baby, come here, let me hug you. No, you come here, I can't walk. After saying this, I burped. When I adjusted, I noticed that Tiffany Broad had walked up to me, the buttons on his dark red shirt slightly wide. Actually, I never told him. I love him wearing a dark red shirt more than he wears black and white. I love his deep and forbearant love for me, like an old wine that has stood the test of time, and can withstand the tempering of time. Suddenly he was hugged in the air, and I exclaimed. Then I found myself straddled his lap, and my hands rested on his chest. Why are you scaring me? I looked at Tiffany Broad with misty eyes, but his kiss fell unexpectedly. Eyes, nose tip, earlobes, collarbones, everywhere he went, he was imprinted with his traces and flavors. A tingling sensation from the back of my spine hit my head like a brilliant firework. I fell. I don't even remember when I was carried back to the master bedroom by Tiffany Broad, and the black, white and gray tones of the master bedroom were all but dim lighting. From night to day, when I fell asleep at nearly 7 o'clock, I squinted and saw him with a hoarse voice and red eyes. Baby, you're mine. Don't run away. I'm going crazy. The man's warm big palm wrapped around my thin waist, and the sexy voice sounded in my ears. I'll give you my life. Maybe you won't leave me again. The man's out-of-control voice shocked me from the bottom of my heart. Immediately, I felt a pain in my heart and fell into a coma. I clutched my aching head and looked at everything familiar and unfamiliar in front of me. I'm back to my own world. What's going on? System, come out and explain to me what's going on. I'm crazy about calling the system in my head. After a long time, a weak voice sounded. Host, you succeeded. The male protagonist was successfully transformed by you. You return. Here it comes. When my energy runs out, it will dissipate, and then you can live here well, and I won't arrest you back. Tasked. I'm leaving. You take care. After the system said this, it never showed up again, no matter how I called. Immediately, I realized that I was in tears, and I sat on the ground, my heart twisted. What to do? What about Tiffany Broad? If I leave like this, will he think that I am a liar, deceive his people and heart, and leave? I lost my soul and stayed on the street. Suddenly, the voice of a passer-by sounded. Little girl, are you all right? Need help? It's cold on the floor. Don't sit still. It's not good for your health. The voices of passers-by kept coming to my ears, but I couldn't hear a word. All that's on my mind is, what will happen to Tiffany Broad? Would he be such a paranoid person? Would he do stupid things? I don't know how long it took. I got up from the floor and told myself repeatedly that I couldn't give up, and that I would find a way back. In the years that followed, I managed to gather evidence that my girlfriend's published novel was plagiarized from me. 2 years later, the novel that belongs to me and his story was successfully published, and I became a famous author from a young age. But I wasn't happy at all. Over the past 2 years, I've tried countless ways, but I haven't succeeded in returning to the world of the book. I was not reconciled, and this was the end of my story with him. I've been back in bed countless times, thinking back to the scene before I wore the book, but to no avail. I'm still in the original world. It's snowing today, so I went out, and the snowflakes fell, and I reached out to take them, and saw them melt into my palms. That's nice. At the beginning, I made an agreement with Tiffany Broad that I would have the opportunity to see the first snowfall. Peking is a coastal city and there is almost no snow. Tiffany Broad, do I have a chance to see you again? I can't hold it anymore. I miss you so much. Why can't I go to your world? Over the years, even though I have returned to my own world and have fans and readers, I am still lonely. My heart was empty, and the people who were in this position disappeared. I looked up at the sky, gray, like the last time I wore a book, and it was unpleasant to look at. Suddenly, I felt that it was dark in front of me, and the scenery in front of me shook for a moment. Immediately, I fainted and the scene changed, and I saw a familiar figure in a black coat walking towards me. It's Tiffany Broad. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I could count on seeing him. On the day it snowed in my native world, I almost did something stupid. Suddenly, a voice from the system came out of my head. Host, I feel that you are too pitiful, and I use my energy to help you exchange the opportunity for you to meet and cross the dimension. I hope you can be happy. Tiffany Broad dropped his little black umbrella and ran towards me, and he picked me up, and I reached out to touch his haggard face. I heard him say, Violet Wallace, you've seen you. I'm going crazy, waiting for you. Warm liquid slid down his cheeks. I love you, and have never forgotten you for a moment. He hugged me tightly and finally whispered, don't leave me again. Violet Wallace, marry me. Okay. I put on the ring he had prepared at some unknown time, and leaned up to kiss him. Today is the first snow in Haking in all these years. You have appeared, and we are going to be white-headed together. Yes, baby, we'll always be together. Tiffany Broad hugged me tightly in his arms. The end.